Hello and welcome back to Closely Observed English, and here's another writing feedback video. Again, it is C1 Advanced and we're looking at an essay. First of all, then we're going to look at the rubric for the essay, which is over just here. And this is the old climate change thing. What needs to be done about climate change? If you're preparing for C1 Advanced and above, learn everything you can about climate change. B2 first, it helps as well, but it is a very common topic. It recurs, and for good reason, obviously, but you really need to be able to talk about it and to have some opinions ready. So before we get into this, think about climate change, think about what you're going to say when you're asked about climate change. It really will help you. So, what needs to be done about climate change? Scientific research, education, legislation. Okay, write an essay for your tutor discussing two of the things that need to be done about climate change in your notes. You should explain which you think is more important to be effective, giving reasons in support of your answer. Okay, so here we go. What should we do to win the battle against climate changing? That's our title. Climate changings are a global issue and everyone should give his own contribute to save our variety of environments from rising temperatures. Today, a challenge which must be met is reducing CO2 emissions in the atmosphere. The most important part of this process could be done by governments. Okay. Governments should introduce new rules in order to protect our planet and should invest money in renewable energy sources to substitute fossil fuels as energy sources for industries and families. Every year, a family needs a lot of energy, only considering electricity at home and petrol for car. To reduce energy needing, government should step in to finance the purchase by each family of electric cars and a system of solar panels, increasing benefits for them and investments on charging points for cars. In this way, also, energy providers will need a smaller amount of fossil fuels to produce few energy and can easily move to renewable energy sources. An objection is that the best way to reduce carbon dioxide emissions in the atmosphere is forcing energy providers to move from non-renewable sources to renewable ones. According to them, government should give them benefits to change the way to produce energy. However, it should not be forgotten that renewable energy sources are not efficient as fossil fuels. In some cases, they need a lot of space, like solar panels fields, to produce the same amount of energy of a traditional process based on fossil fuels, which need only a single establishment. All things considered, the first step to reduce CO2 emissions is promoting the energy independence. Where it is possible, government should give financial support to families to reduce the energy request, and as a consequence, the energy production and helping providers to move to renewable sources. Right, okay. So, in terms of content then, remember we needed to talk about two of the points just here. We have a choice of three, and then we should explain which you think is more important to be effective. Now, of those points, we've definitely got something about legislation, and that's here. But it seems that we've got a whole paragraph about the benefits of legislation, which is new rules, but actually most of it is just government support. So the government should finance the purchase of things. So it's not really legislation as such, not as the rubric suggests. And then the next paragraph looks at objections to that. So it doesn't really address any of the points just here. And then I don't think there's really a decision to be made about which is more important because we haven't got more than one thing. We haven't got anything about scientific research. I don't think there's anything about education. So neither of the other points has been raised. So unfortunately, that means that we're kind of down here in a band one sort of situation. Now, I'm not saying that the essay is terrible. I'm saying that as Cambridge might assess it, looking at the content frame just here, a lot of this is talking about something else, not talking about this, perhaps. So the target reader is not going to be informed if the target reader was the teacher who set this as homework. The teacher who set it as homework might have said, okay, this is a nice essay, but did you actually look at your homework before you did it? Did you look at what I told you to do? That's the target reader here, isn't it? Your class has done this and your tutor has asked you for an essay. Your tutor wants the essay, so they want proof that you were listening in the lesson and most importantly, that you were listening when he set the homework. So I'm afraid the content here is a 1. around there anyway, because so much of it is irrelevant. The target reader simply won't be informed. Now, when we come to communicative achievement, it's not quite as bad, I would say, because we do have conventions of the communicative task here. It is an essay that argues a point. I think it does a good job of arguing that point. I don't think, though, that the point to be argued here is the one that the candidate has selected. I wrote an article for humanizing language teaching, and you can find it on my website, closelyobserved.com. You can get the link from it to it from there. And the whole point of what I was writing about was there's a big difference between writing what you want to write about and passing an exam. And if those two are different spheres, you're not going to pass. You're going to write something interesting, you're going to express yourself, but you'll do so at the expense of a lot of marks. And that's certainly the case with the content. With the communicative achievement, it is an essay that argues the point. It holds the reader's attention, certainly. It communicates straightforward and complex ideas. Maybe not the complex ideas so much because they're not really related to the topic, but you can get to them here. So, okay, that's not the end of the world. I'm going to go for a 2 here. I think that there's room for improvement, certainly, but we'd need to deal with the content first before we move on to anything else. What about the organization then? Well, we have organization at the paragraph level. So we have an introduction, we have the pros, and then the cons, and then the conclusion. So there is a sense of organization here. Within the text itself, is there much linking between sentences? Possibly, yeah. In the introduction, we have today a challenge which must be met. So that's good organization. That's a relative clause. Is reducing CO2 emissions in the atmosphere. The most important part of this process could be done by government. So that's good organization, linking that back in. The paragraphs are pretty well structured. They build their points going through sentence by sentence. There's enough here to suggest that it's okay. So I'm going to go for a 3 because it would be better organized, obviously, if it actually addressed the content. And if you structured the essay to build, so you have the first idea, you build it and you move away. Second idea, build it, move away. Choose which is more important, giving reasons. That's quite crucial. And that's it. That's really the concluding part of it. Now, the language is a bit of an issue in this text. There are a lot of errors. They don't tend to get in the way of communication. Like, I can get the idea here, but there are lots of errors, and they are not errors that really belong at C1 level. Starting right from the title, there's no need to change set phrases like climate change. We don't need more than one way of saying that. We can talk about global warming, of course, but we don't need to say climate changing and substitute that simply to avoid repeating what was in the rubric. It's climate change. So we keep it like that. I'm not going to go through the essay and pick out every single error. I am going to say that the number of errors is far too high for a C1 advanced piece of writing, and that a lot of them could be fixed just by really focusing on control, but also clarity of expression. And again, partly because of the content, I don't think it's worth going through looking at the mistakes too much, because a lot of the mistakes will probably take care of themselves if you simply address the content points. A lot of the writing here is kind of stretching a bit too far, because you're trying to build a 200-word essay around one content point that wasn't even given in the rubric. Instead, focus on the rubric, address the 2 content points that you want to talk about, introduce a point, develop the point, move on. And if you do that, you'll find that a lot of the mistakes that you make along the way will disappear. I'll leave it as an exercise for other people who watch the video to go through and pick out some of the errors that they notice. They can share them in the comments if they want to. I don't think that it would be a very productive use of anyone's time to go through in too much detail, picking out every little misspelt word or wrong word choice or mistake there. So there are some good things, it has to be said. Going back to that first paragraph, there there are there's nice use of modals, there's nice use of relative clauses. However, just there are too many these kind of these little niggling mistakes that you kind of have to just fine tune. One of the best ways of doing that, though, is by writing more. So it's good that the candidate has written this and sent it to me. I think that you can improve your writing without somebody going through pointing out all the mistakes. And in fact, you probably get better at writing if your mistakes aren't pointed out to you. So there is that. For language, then I'm going to go for a band 2. It's not completely impossible to read it and to get something from it. There are good points here that come through, but there are lots of little mistakes. So concentrate back on the content and see what happens. You might find that you take care of most of those mistakes just by fixing the content. And there we go. On that point, I'll say farewell for now. I'll be making more of these videos very soon. Thank you for watching and goodbye.